Hi, it's Keith. It's kind of plugged on, and I'm doing a fucking video. So tonight was a cool night because 2 episodes of Teen Wolf aired tonight on MTV, back to back. First Face-to-Faceless, and then Pressure Test. So I know with the last video, if you watched it, I was debating whether or not I wanted to do both these videos in one, and due to circumstances, I've decided to do them separately. So I'm going to do Face-to-Faceless now, and then hopefully sometime within the next week, hopefully I'm going to do Pressure Test. I mean, a little bit of insight. Main reason that I'm doing this is because me and a group of my friends, if you follow the Plugged On channel at all, a bunch of us, we did a fantasy football league, and our draft had to take place, and the only time it was available for everybody was taking place basically during Pressure Test. So I'm gonna have to rewatch the episode or get a bit more of a synopsis on it before I can review that episode. But I was able to watch Face-to-Faceless thoroughly, so that's why I'm gonna do this one. So it's just this episode. I'll do the other one here at a later date. So Face-to-Faceless was directed by Lyndon Ashby. So I thought it was really cool that last week After Images was directed by Tyler Posey, and this week was directed by Lyndon. So that's another cool thing. Just they're doing a lot of that stuff this season. So the episode opens up with a girl named Quinn, whom is having car trouble. So a couple cars pull up, and at first, it's supposed to be played off like, oh yeah, we're just helping out you stranded on the road, but I mean, it's Teen Wolf. It's obvious that they're hunters, and it's obvious that she's a werewolf. So when they eventually try to attack her, she eventually fights them off until a deputy shows up. And at first she's relieved that a deputy's coming to help her, but then the deputy aims her gun at her and shoots her, and thus her fate is left kind of undetermined for much of the episode. So I'll get the two minor things of the other minor thing of the episode done. So, in the morgue, Aaron shows up, or whomever or whatever is impersonating Aaron, and he opens up the drawer that has the skinless body or whatever, the faceless body from the last couple episodes, and he opens his mouth, and the spiders that went in him spews out onto the body. He promptly collapses, and I don't believe he's dead. He might be. I might have just maybe missed a cue, but then the body rises up from the table and then goes off. And so thus, like, when Parrish and the sheriff show up a little bit later in the episode with Melissa, the body's gone. And speaking of Parrish, he's kind of being overcome by fear as well. He's kind of hallucinating stuff, and he sees the body, and he almost fires his gun off in the sheriff's station. So even some of the supernaturals are being affected by this fear epidemic in a way. But basically half the episode takes place following Liam. So Liam's feeling extremely guilty / almost afraid after Lori and Brett's deaths, and then him revealing that he's a werewolf in the middle of the street, and he doesn't want to go to school. And eventually Scott convinces him by saying, be Clark Kent, which is a cool little homage because Dylan Sprayberry played a young Clark Kent in Man of Steel, which is just a cool little thing. So he ends up going to school, but a lot of people are whispering and talking about him and about what he is, though nobody really has any proof. And so the first altercation takes place in the locker room for the lacrosse team, which we meet Gabe, who's a new character for the first time, and we meet Nolan. So the lacrosse team is like, hey, we don't want someone like you being our team captain. And Liam wisely chooses to not, lose it and go against them, and eventually lets Nolan become captain of the lacrosse team. But that doesn't vilify anybody. Both Gabe and Nolan want him to shift, to show everybody what they know. And there's a couple other things that happen throughout the episode. So, like, for one, he goes to the guidance office to sit with Monroe, but then as they're talking, she's talking about him getting bullied. He notices a book that's about the supernatural. He notices the claw marks kind of on her neck, and so he deduces that, oh, she's the hunter, and then ends up leaving. And then later, in a science class, nobody wants to work with him, and so it's becoming very apparent that the fear that everybody's feeling is very much real. And it all kind of comes together when Mason is trying to lead an invisible Corey and Liam outside of the school, but eventually they're caught, which leads to Liam thoroughly getting the shit kicked out of him by Gabe and sort of Nolan egging him on in a classroom. And they're trying to force him to shift, and like they're beating him, like he's all seriously bloody by the end of it. But Liam somehow manages to hold off and stay controlled, despite, there's a crowd of people watching, despite even the science teacher is unwilling to step in. And he manages to keep control until Coach shows up, and surprisingly, him being the voice of reasoning, and calls everybody off and tells them to scatter. And then Liam, is let outside. And then during a conversation with Mason, as they're trying to get to Mason's car, Mason's like, I know what you're doing. You let yourself get beat up because you feel guilty over Lori and Brett's deaths. You blame yourself. And he goes, I know a hunter killed it, and I know who it is. And so it's Monroe. The other part of the episode is basically Scott wants to have, I guess, a peace summit with Gerard. And so first Chris goes to talk to Gerard, but he doesn't get through, and he even goes to Melissa and tells Scott that Scott needs to run, that he needs to try to survive, but Scott's still unwilling. So they send Lydia to go talk to Monroe, and Monroe is initially very reluctant, but eventually agrees. So they meet down in the tunnels, but she's brought hunters with her, and I guess secretly Malia and Lydia have followed Scott into the tunnels. But Scott and her are talking, and she brings up a lot of things, like, how many people died so that you could keep your secret, why, all you do is try to save people, but it never works. And he goes, what happened to you? Something must have happened. And it's revealed that in season 5, during the episode where, like, they track the Beast to the school, and the Beast is in, like, a bus, she was in the bus, and that she had survived, but they didn't bother checking to see if anybody had survived, and just went after the Beast, which which is why she hates the supernatural. And so eventually, it's obvious that there's no plans for peace, and Gerard's there, and they all pull guns on each other. And then finally, Malia and Lydia show up, but the dead body has kind of entered into the area, so the hunters start hallucinating. Some of them see, like, the Dread Doctors, and they just start wildly firing in every direction. So Scott and them take cover, but then Parrish comes down and finds a dead body and, like, basically uses a flare to light himself on fire and destroys the body. So, and that's kind of like that, and then the hunters all scatter as well. So then, after this, Scott's, there was no way to talk for peace. You did everything you could. That's what Malia tells him, and he goes, no, I didn't do everything. And then at the end of the episode, it's revealed that Quinn's alive, and that she's kind of come to Scott looking for help, because it was a deputy that tried to kill her. And that's basically the whole episode. There's maybe a couple details, again, because I was kind of sidetracked, but I think that's a fairly good run-up of the episode. So I like the little things, like, again, the beatdown between Gabe and Liam was cool, because Lennon Ashby is he played Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat, so that's pretty cool. But I think he did a very good job with this episode. It was another episode that kind of captures the fear, and kind of captures the rawness, I feel. And I just kind of like everything. There was, like, a couple things that I just initially thought were weird. Well, one, Lydia's look for the episode is really weird. She just kind of dresses differently. She has, like, jeans on, which is, I know that she started wearing pants after a while, and then, like, in a tank top, and it's like, oh, that's not usual. And there was another sort of Scott and Malia moment, when it's kind of like a piggybacking off the last one, where they're both trying to say something, but they don't know what that is. And so, and I like the build up to where their relationship's going. I think it's working out very, very well. But this one seems a little short and rushed, but honestly, yeah, at least in my opinion, this was a more straightforward episode, in which, like, there were some smaller, cooler moments. Like, I like the fact that we get to actually see Chris genuinely care for Scott. Like, he's never been one to actually show that necessarily. Like, it's understandable that they, that they respect each other and they have a close relationship, but this is him, like, he needs to run. This is, this is not what this is about. And he just kind of, and things like that, and just showing how, like, oh, everybody's kind of doesn't want to go for peace. And it's evident with the way that people talk that the war is coming. And then that comes into the next episode, Pressure Test. There's even some more other cooler stuff that happens in Pressure Test, because that episode has a lot of cool people. I believe it has Sprayberry's sister plays one of the werewolves. Theo's back in that episode. Deaton's back in that episode. The one orderly from Mike and House is back in that episode, but like I said, I'm going to do that in a later video. Again, hopefully later this week once the episode comes up online and like other things like that. But yeah, I believe that's everything. So thanks for watching. Again, hopefully at the latest I can have Pressure Test up by Sunday. I'd hope to maybe get it up earlier, but the next Teen Wolf episode doesn't happen for quite some time. If I'm not mistaken, it doesn't happen until September 3rd. So we got 2 weeks, because next week is the VMAs, which, no offense, I probably wouldn't have watched that episode. If there was an episode there, I probably wouldn't have watched it live anyway, because next week is the Game of Thrones season finale. So thanks for watching. Go check out Plugged On, and yeah, bye.